And welcome to the Aaron Katzman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katzman. We speak about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon-to-be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. And if you've not yet done so, please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and to the podcast. We're continuing on. We're back. We had a little hiatus where I was speaking about like money, financial issues, but we're back to speaking with entrepreneurs. And it's my honor to bring on the show Matthew Salmon, who's the founder of the Bespoke Banker, the premier advisor for mid-market financial lending management, which enables business owners to focus on growth by providing bespoke management of their lending relationships. He has over 15 years experience as a reputable lender in the New York City metro area. And he's interacted with a multitude of business owners across industries, from startups to multi-generational corporations. He has developed a qualified network of professional centers of influence. Matthew Salmon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on it.
Thank you. So what is the Bespoke Banker? That's like an intriguing name. What is it?
Right. So essentially the Bespoke Banker is an advisory and lobbying company for middle market lenders middle market companies in the U.S. So essentially, what we do is we're that bridge between middle market companies, their lender, their accounting firm, okay, which involves their owners, the CFOs, and we just make sure that that relationship is the best relationship that they have. Everything is structured right, that they have the right partners, and make sure they have the best deal within the inner workings of the marketplace. And then we manage that with them to make sure that they're always in good standing and they always have what they need.
So how are you defining sort of the middle market? What would that be in terms of size, let's say?
Right. So primarily these are privately owned companies with revenues, I would say, of minimum of $15 to $20 million. And they have financing needs of about $5 million plus.
Okay. So let's say I have a supermarket business, right? Or I don't know what, and I bring in my revenues and I need to expand, right? So I need lending, right? I need to get a loan. That's where you come in, right? I bring you in then, or what?
Yeah. So what we do is more holistic. Whereas we pretty much broke the broker model, the loan broker model. So we are not loan brokers per se. Part of what we do is placement. But we will take, for example, your import company that doesn't understand why the relationship is failing with the bank, or why can't they get the accommodations they need. And we will come in and we will assess that relationship and determine where did things fall off the rails? How do we get them back on the rails? Or even as simple as a company doesn't know their value within the lending community. Do they have the right product? Are they in the right space? And we will come in and we will assess that and work with them to make sure that they do have the right product, the right partner, and B, make a plan to make sure that they get to a better situation than they're currently at.
Better situation meaning better terms on the loans, or other things?
So within lending, there's a lot of different ways to define better. Pricing is not always the metric of what a better deal is. I always tell my clients, we want to get you the best right deal, not necessarily the cheapest, loosest deal. Because for some owners of companies, to have certain freedoms may not be the best for their business, because they may not know how to deal within that environment, right? So what we do is we make sure that they have the right controls in place based off of how they operate and manage, and based off of the strength of their finance team, the CFO, and their accounting team. All right. And then we determine what's the best deal we can get within that institution, or that product category that is right for them. And it may be that it's the best pricing, but it may not always be the best pricing, but the right structure and the right advocate at that lending institution for them.
That's really interesting. It's sort of like a financial advisor for lending, right? You look at sort of the whole picture, and you set up a lending structure which suits their goals and their specific needs based on, the style of the business, and I guess the style of the management as well, right?
Correct. And that's the beauty in middle market companies, is that every single company, that doesn't matter if they're in the same industry or if they're even importing the same product or providing the same service. Every company is owned by a different owner, and every owner manages their business differently. And therefore, there has to be bespoke customization into how these companies are financed. A company that is highly levered may work for that owner. But for a different owner that takes a more conservative approach, he may not sleep at night if his company is highly levered. He needs a different product, one that's more conservative for him, that works for him and allows him to sleep at night. That's
great. I finally understood what it is that you do. It's good. That's good that we're talking. How did you get into this? Is this something you've been doing for a long time, or how did you decide to open the firm?
So I was actually forced to open it. I had a very, very good career back in the United States. I was 15 years plus in middle market lending, starting from I started as an underwriter, okay, on the credit side of the industry, and worked my way to the sales side of the industry with having a 10-year career at Israel Discount Bank of New York. And I had this dream of moving to Israel. And because of cross-border regulation, I could not do that. And I kept hitting brick walls. I did a business pilot trip to see if I was relevant in the marketplaces here in Israel. I spent 2 years trying to negotiate and see how I could work here in Israel doing what I was doing. And I found that between the language barriers and between how finance is done here in Israel, there was too much of a gap. So I ended up securing myself a job at a micro VC as the head of investor relations. And I thought I'd give it a shot. Now, I was flipping the table. I was going from somebody that was giving out money all the time to somebody now that was trying to take in money. And I thought I could do it, but my strength hadn't ever been deposit gathering. It has primarily been the ability to make loans and help customers in that way. And I found that it wasn't working for me. I made a great network within the VC world, within family offices, and I worked my butt off that first year, but it wasn't working. So I just said, you know what? I spent over 15 years reaching the top of the industry I was in, reaching the top of a career. Why should I reinvent myself? Let me see if there's something I can do in order to piggyback off of the skill set and the network that I already had that knows my reputation back in the New York metro area. So I had an idea about, I would say, 13 years ago when the first bank I was working at failed. I didn't have the pedigree, and I didn't have the network, and I didn't have the just the experience in the industry to properly get it off the ground. And it was the origins of the Bespoke Banker. So I left the VC. I went back to the States for the summer so my family could see their friends and their other relatives. And I sat down and created the business plan for the Bespoke Banker, had as many meetings with as many business owners, lenders, confidants, advisors that I could. And within a month and a half, I had my first client.
That's a great story, because you're it's not the typical sort of entrepreneurial story, right? You got up, you came to the startup nation, as they say, you moved to Israel, and things didn't work. You tried, but things just didn't work out. And then you went back to your experience and decided to start a business off of that. That's really interesting. So how is it trying to run a business, let's say, that's focused in a different country from where you're actually living? How is that?
So to be honest with you, I would not have been able to start or grow this business had it not been for the fact that A, I'm in a different time zone entirely by 7 hours, and B, there wasn't an acceptance of remote work. Because of the time change, I found that I had more quality time to do work. I wasn't distracted by having those office conversations. And also it benefited my clients because there was a lot of work I was able to get done before their workday started. So the planning and the execution can happen during the East Coast work hours. And prior to that, I was doing some of the planning and catch-up work for it. So because of that, and because of the acceptance of my client base with the concept of remote work, because they saw the value in the service being offered, if I was not in Israel, I would not have had the time in order to build this, because I would have been running around from in-person meeting to in-person meeting and dealing with New York traffic and not actually getting the work done to build the business.
so the move to work at home and more online and COVID sort of played into your favor.
Correct. In hindsight, it was the perfect storm for me to start this. And
Wow.
I was coming out of a career of being a corporate, but I came out of a family of entrepreneurship. So my father, my mother were both business owners. My grandparents on both sides were business owners. So it was kind of had an obligation as a member of the family I was in that, eventually you have to get out of the corporate world and you have to start something. And I always went into the industry with the mindset that I was learning it from the inside out so I could be helpful from the outside in. And 2008 happened. And after the Great Recession, I found that I got stuck in the industry. But, hindsight is 2020. It was the greatest blessing that ever happened to me.
So you grew up amongst entrepreneurs. So did you always have did you have an inkling when you were young that you were going to at some point have your business, or did you have, paper routes, and were you always sort of entrepreneurial when you grew up?
So I was always entrepreneurial when I grew up. I was always trying to do new things, take leadership roles. I'd frequent my father's office when I was a little kid, seeing him run the business. I thought I was eventually going to go into his business, but because of the industry that he was in, which is appraisals, it's a very closed industry, especially in the United States, because of the process of getting licensed. And he saw that the average age of an appraiser was just aging out, and computer technology was kind of taking over the role, or has been taking over the role. So he basically told me, this isn't an industry you come into and have longevity. You need to go and figure out what it is you want to do with your life.
You're running a business which is from afar, right? Remotely, you're sort of running a business. What kind of challenges does that create for you, both on sort of the regulatory bureaucratic side, and obviously you spoke to the fact that it's been a boom for your business, actually, the time difference, right? But what are some of the other challenges that you have from it?
So some of the challenges, obviously, some of the fastest way to close deals is face-to-face meetings. Mm-hmm. So planning out that travel back to the United States in a way that is conducive to how I want my family life to be was a challenge. But I figured it out. Basically, every 6 weeks approximately, I fly back for 4 days. Okay. I cram in as many meetings as I can. My goal is to never be in the States on a weekend. The other benefit is that part of the deal that I made with my wife is that she gets to go back in the summers to see her family, her friends, and my kids, that they get to see their friends also. So that is very conducive for business. Not everybody has that option. But it's something that we do. It's the weeks are getting shorter and shorter. I don't know how much longer we're going to be going back for more than a month in the summers. But those are some of the challenges. One of the other challenges was getting to that point. I'm dealing in confidential information. I need to make sure that I have the best systems in place. Mm-hmm. My philosophy is that if I'm advising companies on best practices, I have to follow them myself, right? So in order to do that, in order to provide proper security, proper back end of storage of what I need to service my business, it was a jump. Also, to bring on employees, to reach that next step, and to determine the pricing plan that would allow me to do that and not get overwhelmed. So, I have to say that one of the greatest things that happened to my business was being approached by a very well-known, reputable CPA firm in New York City, LMC and Co., Lee Cohen, who basically saw the value in what I was doing and said, okay, I'm coming in, we're going to partner. I want you to service my clients. And we have the best back end when it comes to security, et cetera. And you will use me as a jumping board to really grow and blow this business up in a good way. So that was last November. And ever since then, we've been on a very good growth run. You mentioned
traveling every 6 weeks. Is that something that you think will slow down, that you won't have to, as you sort of, I assume that your business is split into two, right? Getting new business and recurring business from the same, from the same mid-sized companies, right? Do you find that, or do you sort of see that the travel will sort of ease a little bit as you go on, as you sort of have more recurring revenue from existing clients?
So I see that it's possible I could, but I don't want to.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. Number one, I have to make sure that I understand what's going on within the lending world. Okay, in order to that, I have to be at industry events. So my travel plans typically are planned around industry events because I need to know what's going on within each institution, and I need to know what the overall environment is within those institutions. At the same time, there's a value in being face to face with my clients. And during these meetings, things come out that don't necessarily come out over a shorter, Zoom call or video call, right? So I try to keep it to a schedule. My time in the States is jam-packed, but it's very meaningful. So could I? Yes. Do I want to? No.
Interesting. So lots of recent immigrants, Olim or potential Olim, watch this, who are thinking about starting a business. You sort of have a unique perspective because a lot of them might think, you know what, I'm going to start an online business. I don't have to start a business in Israel. I can start a business, I can wherever, right? What advice would you give to them if they're thinking of starting, a business like you have, not your field necessarily, but something where, it's not in the same location as you are sort of domiciled in?
Right. So I would say that number one is if you have built yourself a career in a certain area, and maybe it's not, or maybe it's transferable here to Israel. In my case, it wasn't transferable as is. I had to kind of move to the other side of the table, right? But if you have a skill set that you've built up over a period of time, you need to sit down and you need to think of ways either A, to maintain that network and that revenue source in the country you're coming from, because that is, in my opinion, that is the ideal way to live in Israel. Okay. Or B, what I did is I did a week and a half business pilot trip to network my butt off. And I came just by myself in every single relevant industry that I thought my skill set could be useful for. And that had a big effect on how I was planning my business, because I was able to see how the industries that I would have been searching for jobs here in Israel operate, and making those connections and understand what my earning potential was. And because I had that experience, I was able to make a determined decision that, okay, I was going to see first if I can make it work in Israel, working for an Israeli company. And then I would sit down and determine, okay, what is it that I could do? How could I piggyback off of what I was doing in the States and networking and turn that into something? So it was a plan A and a plan B. Now, plan B could be plan A. Plan A could be plan B. But my advice is don't take the skill set that you've developed outside of Israel and let it go. Find a way to develop that into a revenue stream here in Israel, and don't think that you're stuck developing that revenue stream from Israel, meaning just in Israel. That when you come to Israel, the whole world is your oyster. You could take your skill set, and wherever it's applicable, you could generate and try to generate revenue streams from that. You're not stuck in a box. And you'll find that when you get to Israel, everybody's an entrepreneur. Everybody's looking to network, and nobody wants you to do anything but succeed. And everybody will be encouraging and helpful. And, my entire business plan was based off of a worksheet that a very good high school and college friend gave me. And I spent a day and a half building my business plan off of this spreadsheet. And that was somebody that is here in Israel that wanted me to succeed. And my entire business was grown from the support I had here in Israel from friends and family.
That's great. One more question to speak about, because there are a lot of people who might not even be entrepreneurs, but they're thinking of keeping their job in the U.S. The travel, right? You're traveling, I would say, sort of, every month and a half or so. It's not so terrible, but it certainly can take a toll. And you mentioned how you made a deal with your wife. Speak a little bit about just the toll it takes to travel, and how that frees you up maybe for some more quality time with your family, the time that you're actually here.
Right. So schedule is very, very important in Israel. especially if you're dealing with different time zones. So you have to schedule your free time. It's very important for anybody's health because you can find yourself working for 12 hours plus every single day because you have all day. If you're dealing with the East Coast or even the West Coast, you have all day before you really start your work hours, right? Travel also, it's very important that your whole family is on the same page, right? So for me, what was important to me was to be home for Shabbat, to be home for the weekend. And I plan my travel around that. And it's also important for my wife. All right. Now, the second thing is, and it's the second thing after making sure that your family is on the same page with travel, and after making sure you have a schedule and you bake in that free time for yourself, okay, is you have to make sure your family has a strong support system where you move. When you make Aliyah to Israel, the most important thing to have, whether you have family here or you don't have family here, is to move to a place where you know people and you could establish a support system, because that support system is what's going to allow you to focus on your work when you're not in Israel, and let you do what you need to do and make sure that the support is there for your family while you're away. And without that, it is not possible. It does not work.
That was great. Well, Matt, thanks so much for coming on. That was really really interesting. I think that's going to actually help a lot of people. So thank you again for coming on. And I was remiss. How can people get in touch with you?
So we have a website. It's www.thebespokebanker, THEBESPOKEBANKER.com. And you're more than welcome to reach me through there. We have a telephone number there. We have a direct link to emailing me. We have a video to explain more about what we do, which was done here in Israel for the same cost in shekels as it would have been in dollars. So there is benefit here marketing-wise to being in Israel. And that's the easiest way to get a hold of me.
And we'll put that information on the show's notes as well, so people can just click in and go right to your website. Matt, thanks so much for coming on. It was great.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
You've been tuning into the Aaron Katzman Show, where we speak about your life, your money, and your investments. Be sure to hit the like button below. And if you've not yet done so, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.